Yes.
So everyone just needs to approve that. And then I'm going to turn things over to Juanita here, and folks will do some introductions. I'll be in the background if anybody needs me.
Okay.
But yeah.
Hello, good afternoon. So
Hi, Juanita. How are you?
good. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. And thank you for all of the emails. You kept me on point. So thank you so much.
Oh, no problem. It's my pleasure. So I'm Juanita again. I'm the youth lead organizer for 482 Forward. Lindsay and I work very closely with the youth collective, and I'm so glad that we can have you here getting interviewed by our youth. So I'll do a quick rundown if you're not sure what 482 Forward is, or if you know who we are, we love to see it. But 482 Forward is an education justice organization. Our main focus is making sure that the youth voice is heard. And that's why I'm so happy to be working a part of the youth collective, because these young people are so mighty and they have a lot to say, and I'm so glad to be a part of it. So with that being said, the youth collective or the youth organizing collective, the YOC, there's so many names for it, put together these questions to ask our school board candidates, just to get to know who everyone is, who's running, and where do they stand, and honestly, really just to get to know you, to maybe sometime in the future work together or have a meeting and talk about things that we want to see in the future. So again, I'm really, really happy to have you here. And what I would love us to do is to do a quick intro. I already said who I am, who 482 Forward is. If you would like to introduce yourself and just give us your name, pronouns, and essentially why you're running.
Okay, so thank you so much. I'm not a stranger to 482 Forward at all. And so really excited that I've seen in these last couple of years the explosion of the youth and their voice, and 482 Forward has been a major force in that. So thank you so much for having me. I'm Angelique Peterson-Mayberry. I am the current president of the school board for Detroit Public Schools Community School District. Been on the board for the last 5.5 years, elected in 2017 after a very rigorous 2016 election where over 50 candidates were running for 7 positions, 7 seats. And so at that time, we know we were coming post emergency management. So there were staggered terms for each board member. So I was one to receive a 6-year term. So my term officially ends December 31st, 2022. And so I am seeking re-election. So support from 482 Forward and all of the community citizens looking for their support to continue the work that we had begun prior to COVID. A lot of work had started, and like so many other spaces, there was this big halt, this space that really put everybody in a space of solitude, and the school district was not exempt from that. And so really, why am I running for school board again? I thought long and hard about it, wondering if it was the right thing to do. And just where I am spiritually, oh, I'm sorry, my pronouns are she and her. And so where I am spiritually, I just really prayed about it and had to get peace about the decision to move forward. And so that decision was to go back and finish or continue the work that we had begun. And so I was really concerned about not having some people at the table to continue this work. Because it's so very important, and there's a lot of transformation that had begun that did not continue, and some new things that we wanted to do that we will do now as we turn the corner from COVID. I do work at Ford Motor Company. I'm a diversity, equity, and inclusion strategist for manufacturing. I also co-chair Women of Ford Manufacturing. And so really important for women in that space to be seen and heard in the world of manufacturing, because it is a male-dominated space. However, we have some amazing women in leadership roles and even those on the floor doing the work, and they don't get enough fanfare. So I help in that space as well. And then I also sit in a space for cultural transformation for the corporate space of Ford Motor Company. Have 2 children. Let me just, I guess, give my personal life. So 2 children who have now graduated. from DPSCD, with my most recent graduate in 2020 from Cass Tech, and I had a 2017 graduate as well who graduated from CMA. I am an alum, just celebrated my 30-year reunion from Martin Luther King Junior Senior High School. So I co-parent with my sister and my brother-in-law. So I have 3 nieces and nephews who are in the school system right now, preschool for one, 6th grade for one, and 8th grade for the other.
Thank you so much. And then I'm gonna pass it on to Bree to ask our next question.
Wait, Juanita, can Bree, I know Imani, but can they introduce themselves as
Oh.
well?
Yes. I don't know why I'm trying to get ahead of the game.
Hi, my name is Brianna. I'm part of the eBoard F4824. I'm also Vice President of Detroit Hills, Detroit. Right now, I'm at college, so. Thank you. It's my 3rd year. I'm a junior, so yeah.
What school, Brianna?
Grand Valley.
All right, way to go. Congratulations. What
Thank
high school
you.
did you graduate from?
Detroit Collegiate.
Okay. All right, let's go Northwestern. Okay.
Okay, so my first question for you would be, how would you engage the community, specifically students and parents, in making decisions with our schools outside of the school board meetings?
So we started doing this before COVID, where we were having community meetings every 3 months. So every 3 months, we were strategically placed in a different part of the city where we decided, and each board member, so it would be 2 board members, the superintendent would be present as well, but it wasn't like a school board meeting because there was more back and forth dialogue, right? So we were doing that, and a lot of the groundwork that rose to the level of the community meetings was introduced in that space. And so it was really exciting to be able to do that. And I think the momentum was there. There were students there. There were stakeholders there from the community, but then COVID hit and we kind of got obviously away from it. So I think we do have to reinstitute those meetings because they were extremely helpful, not only for the board, but I think it gave the community, those who aren't comfortable in the board setting, because it seems a little structured and you know, it's just a little, it doesn't fit for everybody. So I think that they had an opportunity to do that. I've talked to several times, you know, we have a student governance team where there are 2 students from every high school who sit on this governance team. So I've gone and I've spoken, I've even done presentations, a workshop with those young people as well as us bringing young people onto the board. So last year was the first time we had an opportunity to have student ambassadors. So there were 2 ambassadors and 1 alternate. The 2 ambassadors, one from Cass Tech, who you all may know, but he went to Michigan, so he graduated. And then we had one from DSA. She's at College of Creative Studies. So they graduated, but we do have one who matriculated to the board now, Periel Pace. And so she is now over at Martin Luther King. She was at Legacy. Really excited. I promise I didn't convince her to go to King, but I'm glad she did. And so I know she's a community advocate, you know, really, really strong young person. And so now we are getting ready to bring we do love Periel. We're getting ready to bring another young person onto the board and allow another alternate. So what the hope and the goal is when we did that was to allow student voice in the board space. So, you know, there are legal reasons why, you know, they can't vote per se or go in closed session. However, there's a lot of engagement back and forth. And I was really proud of the fact that myself and Misha Stallworth, we were the ones who, when Misha went on maternity leave, I was sitting with those young people, making sure they understood kind of the lay of the land. They had done some training, but just them understanding this space and then hearing from them, answering any questions they might have had about the information. So a long way to say, I think that we have to reinstitute the community meetings. And I would even love to be able to see our student ambassadors be able to lead meetings with young people where board members can join them as we sit alongside them as they chair meetings.
Definitely. Thank you for that response.
Angelique. So as you know, I'm Imani. I use she, her pronouns. I graduated from Renaissance in 2018, and I just graduated from Northwestern University in June. So now I'm
Already?
back.
Oh my
No, right?
God.
It was fast.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So now I'm back working at 42 Forward. I'm the communications lead, so I'm sure we'll be working together in the future a lot. So our next question for you from the youth is that we know the board has a policy in place right now about the possession of weapons inside of the schools, but we also know there's an exception to weapons under the control of law enforcement personnel and items approved by the building principal, which might be like class or presentations or teachers. In light of recent issues regarding gun violence within schools, do you think that the policy should change to not allowing any weapons in or around the schools from anyone?
So I'm not in that space yet, honestly, because as much as I'm in the schools, I just see a lot. I think it was important to realign our department, and you notice they're no longer called DPSCD PD. So they're no longer called the police department. Now they're called the public safety team. One thing that I don't think that we've done a really good job, I sat down with them and they did this presentation basically of who they are, what they do, right? So not who people say they are, but who are they really and what do they do? And it was so much. And I really think that the community needs more of that information. So I would love to have an information session around our public safety team because, you know, I think being able to know our students and know our families, there's a huge advantage to that versus having someone from the outside come in. They have their own, they control the training. So de-escalation and things of that nature. We don't want people to think that they are policing students because that's not their task. What their task is anybody who is disturbing the educational environment, there are consequences to that. And those consequences they vary, right? They can go from 0 to 10. But I think it's important as parents, we know that parents' number one goal when they send their young person to school is to know that they're safe. So what does that look like and who can provide that? So as we continue to try to rebrand them, it's really educating the community. And so that there is this give and take on both ends in terms of who they are and what they do, not who people say they are or people guessing what they do. You know, a lot of times it is not the students, but it is the community who comes in and disturbs the learning environment. Not from what I've heard, what I've seen and experienced, you know, those who are not looking to come in and have great behavior. And they're adults, right? And so they're not displaying it, they're not modeling it. And then we wonder why the young people can't do it because of those that they see. So I think there's an opportunity to share and even open up to decide, you know, what does that look like? Even in my mind, they don't have to be in uniforms, right? Maybe it's khakis and a shirt, and we've seen that they're gradually going into that space. But I think there is still a certain level of respect that comes with the uniform, but we don't want people to be afraid. We really want people to understand that they are there for their safety and protection, not seeing some of the things that they see in society when it comes to the men and women in blue.
Thank you so much for that response. We do have a follow-up question. I know that you kind of made clear your stance, but I'm still going to ask it just so we can have everybody's answer. So as a follow-up, we also know that DPSCD just sent out a robocall stating that they'll be investing money to bring back I guess they're not going to be police officers called police officers, but officers on school's ground at the start of the fall semester. So we just were wondering how you feel about the decision, and if you don't agree with it, where else do you feel like the money could be spent or should be spent?
So I agree with it. Actually, I was one who voted in favor of that. And so what we talked about, we know when we had the situation at Oxford, right? So there were people who panicked, but there are a lot of people who reached out to us to try to see what were we doing. Thank God we've never had a situation like that. But I think there's a learning opportunity for all school districts. You know, in some large urban school district like Chicago, they have SRO officers who are really they're officers from the city and they come into the schools. And I just think that, you know, when you have people where it is not their everyday, all day task, I think there is something that's lost. I remember being at a football game the end of last year, and there were some students who came from a different community coming in, the officers knew who belonged to the school. And so they were able to stop something right in the beginning because they knew, they had heard some social media. Some of the people in the school were kind of telling them at the football game, it's going to be some stuff. And so you had parents who are afraid too. And so I think that when you talk about those spaces, it's really about trying to create some safe spaces for everybody in the school. So what does it look like as we go into the fall? Some of the discussions myself and other board members had was to make sure that there was safety patrols at each high school for sure. Our high schools are our larger schools, and our those were the situations have happened in the past. There were officers who had to get to the school. Maybe some things, the outcome would have been different, but they weren't there at the school. So you have officers now who know the students, know the staff, know the communities, and know the families. And I think that's important. Now they are held accountable like everybody else. And so as we have this hotline on, if there's any appropriate behavior, or if there's anything that needs to be investigated, we have an oversight committee where that's the committee who would do that. So you can do it anonymously. You don't have to say who you are, but you can report, and then the investigation begins even on our public safety officers.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that answer. I'm going to pass
Thank
it on.
you.
Yes, thank you so much. So our next question. So the state's 2023 budget includes $150 million for mental health within schools. Do you believe that is an appropriate amount? What do you want to see done with those funds in DPSCD?
So I think mental health is something that when our COVID dollars stop in 2024, that is something that we've talked about collectively as a board, as we look at what has worked really well with the extra money. What are some things that are non-negotiable? And we collectively have decided mental health, that's non-negotiable. It has begun to be something, really in some spaces, they rebranded, right? And we had a long, extensive conversation at a board meeting about mental health and the stigma attached to it. But the mental well-being, so the well-being of a young person and their support system, because it goes beyond the young person, but offering those services also from the parents and the guardians, because those people too have gone through COVID. Those people too have experienced loss and suffering. And so that is put on the young person who now has the burdens and coming to the school, and they're being tasked with just learning, right? Forget everything else and just learn. So when we started our mental health deep dive, I would say before, we partnered up with the University of Michigan, the Trails program, where every student was given a survey. And based on how you answered the survey would red flag you, the administrators, in terms of this person needing a referral to go deeper. But I think we've got to get more creative about what mental well-being looks like. And so the money that we would put into it is something that we're not willing to pull from it when our COVID dollars stop, just because we've been able to start it with COVID dollars, because we've seen the effects of being able to provide those services. And we hear from the young people who say that they want that support. If people are reaching out, we would hate to be in a space when young people reach out and we have no answer, or we have no resource for them. So if people are saying that they want the support, then we've got to be able to provide it. So is that the right amount? I can't say it's the right amount yet, because at the end of this year, as we go into this year, we're looking at data as to how much in totality was spent and what the impact was on what was spent on mental health. So we'll know how to resource it going forward. And even I will say this too, even for our educators and our staff, they need that mental health support too, because they too have gone through COVID and suffered loss and depression and things of that nature. So we can't expect our adults to be supermen and superwomen when they too are living in this space where they are experiencing some of the same thing that our young people are experiencing.
Thank you.
So the next question that I'm going to ask you is in regards to curriculum. So in what ways do you think DPSCD should make school curriculum more diverse and representative of the student body?
So we've adopted a new curriculum. We initially did a K-8 curriculum, and then we did a high school curriculum. And so some of the feedback, of course, has been around curriculums that speak to Black and Brown students. right? Because of their history. And so we've partnered up with some professionals to bring that into our space. The problem right now is that it's an elective. So it's an elective, and I'm looking to infuse it into the curriculum as a course, not an elective. You know, an elective is kind of like, yeah, I may take it. I don't have, if it's not required, I don't have to take it, right? And I think we do a disservice to our entire population when we allow that to be elective, because then it can be selective, you know, in terms of how you operate and move forward. So I think the core curriculum that we've had to put students back at grade level has been, and I'm not an educator, let me just say that, but what we have relied on, we've relied on educators to tell us if it was the right curriculum to adopt. So the curriculum was not decided by one person. However, there was a panel of people from school level as well as district staff who are experts in education. And so they made the recommendation. There were several curriculums that were considered. There were rubrics that was used, supporting documents and material. And so that information finally came to the board and we made a decision. So I think it's important to say the curriculums that we have are curriculums that were recommended to the board from educators. The board did not make that decision on their own to decide, oh, you know, this is the right curriculum. We heard from the suites, so to speak, those are in the streets that were doing the work to say that this was the right thing. I think one of our challenges is that it's paced. And I get it, right? There are certain data points that you have to have at certain times. But some of the feedback that we've heard from the school level is that their classroom are on different levels of learning. And so I'll give an example. So if by September 1, we would have had to cover material A through L, but yet there were some students who were really negative A when they started learning, then they may not be at L in September. So what happens to those young people? And so that's why our academic interventionists are able to come in and help, because they've identified students who are just a little bit slower on their learning path, so that they don't get discouraged and then become nuances in class. And so I think some of those things are things that we have to continue to look forward to, but I would love to be able to get that elective that we just recently adopted last year, get it into the core curriculum.
I
think there's another space too. Let me say this, I'm sorry, one more thing. Also civics, like we teach civics, but I really feel like we don't go deep enough. You know, when you look at primary elections versus general elections, and you see the number of people who vote, 18-year-olds need to understand the importance of them participating in even a local election. I was talking to a group the other day. I'm always talking to somebody, right? But I was talking to a group the other day, and marijuana came up. And, you know, I had to really get them to understand that the reason, for those who are in favor of it, the reason that it's even legal is because it was on the ballot. It was on a ballot at one point, it had to be voted on. And they thought, oh, we didn't know it was, you know, they just didn't know. And it's no shade on them, but I think we've got to make elections that it's got to resonate more closely with younger people too, so that when you are 18, you understand the importance of your voice, you understand the importance of your vote, and you understand the importance of elections. So the civics that we teach, it doesn't go deep enough into elections. I would love to see like mock campaigns, right? Mock elections in schools. And I know they do them in pockets. Some schools that are really more civic heavy, they do them, but I'm talking about like the masses, just so that they understand the importance of it. And because, you know, they may be voting when their parents aren't voting, because their parents may not understand the importance of it. So we've got to make sure that as we rebrand education and importance of some of these things that we're talking about, that we are really engaging young people in the conversation, so that no matter what's going on beyond them, they understand their value and the importance of their responsibility.
Thank you so much. I was just saying, I really appreciate how thorough your answers are. I can tell that you've been thinking about a lot of this stuff. So we really
Thank you.
Of course. Our next question is regarding the uniform policy in the district. So we were just wondering what your stance is on the current uniform policy in the district, especially when it comes to strictness of keeping it or, you know, not being too strict on it. and just how it might differ school to school, grade to grade, things like that.
So you notice it's changed. This year there's a new policy, right? Because all schools aren't following the uniform policy. And that really is because board members and the superintendent, we sat down, we talked about what does this look like? I met with a couple of young people from the DAM group. And so, you know, they were very vocal. Young people were coming to the board meetings. They were very vocal. And I can appreciate the position that young people were taking. Uniforms are convenient for some families because for them, they don't have to worry about all of the nuances of other clothes, right? It's like, okay, you got a couple pair of black pants, blue shirts, let's go, we're good. Multiple kids, that type of thing, I get it. So what we're trying this year is you'll notice that in that code of conduct, the uniform is a very relaxed policy. It's not even called uniform in some of the schools, mainly like a school like Cass Tech. But there are about, if I'm not mistaken, there are about 16 schools that have tried to veer away from it to try it. The one problem I think that some of the administrators were having is when they were getting laxed, the students were getting more laxed, right? So what does that look like as you say, no rips, right? Or very few rips. Oh, now the rips are, you know, high up and, you know, those type of things. And so what I'm hoping is some of the feedback that we get from the school level leaders now walk us in the right space to see if this was the right decision. But we have definitely relaxed it. This is the first year under this leadership team that we've relaxed it. We don't want people getting suspended for uniforms and shirts not tucked in and belt. That's crazy. That is absolutely crazy because in some households, that's all they have. And so we want to make sure that they are not being locked out of school and kept at home for things as frivolous as that. You know, let's support. There are a lot of stakeholders who want to support in that way. And I know they've done uniform closets at different schools so that young people can get the resources that they need, from shoes to undergarments to uniforms. And so I know that that will continue. I want that to continue for those who are more comfortable that way. But I'm hoping that this relaxation of the code of conduct regarding the attire that young people wear to school, I'm hoping we made the right decision as we go forward, but we'll soon see if it was the right decision. And this was based on the feedback from the young people, honestly, because some parents were still pushing back saying, no, keep the uniforms. So this really was feedback that we received from young people and us being responsive to the feedback that we received, which was well articulated, well thought out, well planned. Surveys were done. I mean, you know, our young people they're on task, they're on point. And so I appreciate being able to meet with them and have them share their values and their views with me.
For sure. Thank you for that, Angelique.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you again. So our next question is, DPSCD just voted to acknowledge Pride Month in the school calendar. How will you stress the importance of advancing LGBTQ plus equity in classrooms?
Yes, I think, you know, Pride Month, of course, you know, I work in diversity, equity, inclusion. So we're doing it all the time in the corporate space. But I think we've got more work to do at the school level so that it reaches to a point where it does not result in bullying and things of that nature. And I think when we create, to me, you know, that's a given. How you come, how you show up, bringing your whole self to school is a given. We're a public education system, we should be welcoming everybody. But I think there's an educational piece that we're missing when we don't talk about some of that belonging and what it looks like and what it feels like to not belong. You know, I do workshops all the time with adults. And so we, you know, I have all of these questions and pictures and videos on when a person belongs, how they feel and how they perform. And then flip it when a person does not feel like they belong. And then what does their performance look like, whether it's in school or in a corporate space? And I think we've got more work to do. The Pride space, I know I went to a multicultural diversity day at Cass Tech last year in the gym. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. I would love, and I know in pockets, schools are doing things because I got calendars. And so I know people are doing things, but I think holistically at scale, there's some things that we could do. And I think educating people on what all of that means is one of it, because, you know, ignorance We can't say for a person who chooses to be ignorant, that's one thing, but there is an ignorance to a lot of that simply because people don't know. So if you don't know, then that's on us. We're an educational institution, so we should be educating people in all of those spaces, and that's just one of those spaces. So I support anything that the school level wants to do regarding Pride Month, but I think holistically as a district, we've got more to do in terms of educating people about it, adults too. Because we can't just assume this is just behavior from young people. Adults are in the same space in the schools, not understanding it. And so we don't have a tolerance for people who don't allow people, whether they're adults or young people, to come and bring their whole selves to the school buildings. Has to be repercussions behind it, because if not, the behavior will continue with other people.
Thank you.
Okay, so this question is kind of about accessibility within the schools. So how would you increase the language accessibility and translation services within our district schools and in communication with like families, certain families?
So I just went to a meeting last week with Powder. Is it called Powder or Poder? Poder. But Nikki was the leader of that group. And she came to a board meeting a couple months ago, and she was sharing some things that I won't speak for the full board, but I will say that I was unaware of. So I went to their community meeting and they shared some things with me, and Dr. Vitti and I talked about what does it look like, right? So when I went to the meeting, I was the minority because I was English speaking. So I put on the earphones and I had to wait for translation. And so instantly I put myself in the space of where they are when they come into our meetings. And I just think we've worked with parent and community engagement. So there's been some improvement. Even the group mentioned there's been some improvement, like the Parent Academy workbooks, right? So now they're translated. But there's some spaces that we've got to address. One of the things that I know is a challenge is resources in terms of finding the people. So what I proposed to the group that day is, will some of the parents be interested in becoming translators, or the students who are recently graduating because they understand both? We've got to find the people. So that's the translation part. But for the materials, there's really no reason why the materials should not be translated when they are receiving materials. And it's just not being done fast enough, even at the board meetings. So starting in September, our board meetings will be at Western High School for the next 6 months, I think. And so we've already said, we need to have translators there, but that whole translation piece requires some patience and some grace, because I noticed when I was speaking at the meeting, I spoke for a minute and then I had to stop, and a lot of translation to happen. That's respect. That's educating yourself on what does that process look like. And again, it's a learning opportunity for everybody. If you go through it and you're wearing the headphones and you're waiting, and then you understand their challenge when they're in a meeting and people are now not acknowledging or even waiting for a translation, let alone if there's no one there to even do it. So there's more work to be done in that translation space. Pretty proud of the work that we've done thus far. Even some of the transportation, I was told that that's been addressed. It was raised, getting young people from Southwest Detroit to Cass Tech, for instance, because some of them were going to Cass. And so that was the challenge. Parents didn't have driver's license, and so we've provided that. But one of the most prideful things I will say is when we made our district a sanctuary district. And so I know there were challenges around ICE, and parents were upset and afraid to come out. And so we did everything we could to ensure them that they were safe in our district. No one should be in the schools asking them for, ID and things of that nature. And if so, let us know, because then they felt as if, that information was being shared with someone outside of our school district. So that was something I was proud that we had done. And I know we were being reactive to some things that were happening in society, but we responded on that really quickly. But we've got more work to do about that translation piece, because I just think that we've got to find some people and then compensate those people. So this wouldn't be volunteer work. This would be, and I think young people can do it. One of the stories that was told to me is a parent went to a PTA meeting, and her young son had to translate for her. And so the teacher was saying things like, he's talking in class, he's not turn in homework. And he was telling his mom, oh, she said, I'm a great student, and I always participate in all of this. And she allowed us to laugh because it was so funny. But she said her other son said, Mom, that's not what the teacher is saying, right? So we have to be mindful about the young people that we bring into the space to do it. But I think if we can find some young people, it definitely creates this pipeline for them beyond just doing it amongst their friends. They could actually do it at the level where they're getting compensated.
Thank you so much for that.
Definitely. So this question is about facilities in our schools. So during the final week of classes, for the last semester that ended, Detroit schools had to end a lot of their days early due to the hot weather, having no AC, things like that. And this is just one of the many issues that the students face due to the conditions that a lot of our schools are physically in.
Mhm.
How do you think that this issue can be addressed by the board? And just like, what are some ideas that you have about it?
Yeah, so we recently, back in April, we approved the $700 million facilities master plan. So $700 million, and it was part of the $1.2 billion from the COVID dollars. And so the board voted in favor 7-0 to approve this facilities plan. One of the things that the plan addresses, in addition to building some new buildings, is it addresses that whole HVAC piece. You guys know students went back this past Monday. And so everybody wasn't happy about the fact, why are we going back before Labor Day? Oh my gosh. But to your point, our district didn't get out to the end of June because of days that we were making up and things of that nature. So going back earlier allows us, yes, to end earlier. We're looking to end that second week, I think June 9th, because the further we go into the summer, the hotter the buildings are. This $700 million facilities master plan would allow almost all of our buildings to be air conditioned. So they will have HVAC opportunities to have air conditioned. And I think that's important because we live in a space where sometimes our summer may come in May, right? And we're still in school. And so then how do you create this space where it's a comfortable learning environment? Going outdoors, if it's too hot, things of that nature. So the facilities plan will address that. There are some philanthropic dollars that community members, businesses has had, they've said, what can we do to help? And so some of those things I think are things that we need to give to them as well so that they can help. A lot of times the students, the staff, the parents, they support these businesses that are sometimes in the neighborhood or even not. But people talk about public education and how they value it so much. Well, show us how you value it, as you are trying to pipeline these young people possibly into your industry or into your business, then create a comfortable learning environment for them right now. So what does it look like aesthetically? What does it look like? We just had cleanup day on August the 9th. And I know I was at a build, August 6th, I was at a building, we were planting hostas and cleaning up. There were some buildings, they were painting and doing all these different things. And so that's not new. We've done that. I've done that since my kids were little. So communities have always come in, but there's only so much community members can do. And so what does that look like beyond that? So that people want to come to school, first of all, and that they don't get used to some of the inferior conditions that they see and think that that's normal. Roofs leaking with buckets, that's not normal. That's not what you're supposed to experience in your school or classroom, right? So those are some of the things that we've addressed a lot because we had a capital fund. So we've been addressing a lot of those, but really addressing them individually as they arise, not at scale across the full district. So this plan will allow us to do exactly that. Hi, Angela.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Angelique. I'm going to Brianna.
Okay, so a few members of the YLC is a part of an organization called My Students Dream, which organizes at the intersection of immigration and education justice. So would you commit to filling out a survey created by those youth members?
I would love to see. I'm not familiar with the organization, so I would love to get some information on the organization and see and maybe come out to a meeting for sure. I'm just not familiar with the organization. It's called My Students Dream.
Yes, so MI like Michigan.
Oh, okay.
And then Students Dream, yeah.
Okay, got it.
They're gonna send out the survey to you within
Okay,
the week. So yeah.
I'm just writing it down. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Are you okay?
When and where do you all meet?
So the YLC meets every other Wednesday from 5 to 7 at Tech Town.
Yes, and as far as my students' dream, I don't know if we know their schedule. If Lindsay, do you know
I
their
can
schedule?
talk on that. Yeah.
Okay,
Lindsay knows.
So I work closely. I'm on the core team for my student stream as well. And then some of our youth who are part of the youth organizing collective, my student stream is a member of the youth organizing collective. And so, but there aren't any on today right now. But yeah, so we meet, we kind of have 3 committees. And so all of our organizing gets done at the intersection of immigration and education justice. And so we have committees who are working with educators, specifically to make anti-racist classroom spaces and kind of have check-ins and support for each other. We also have a youth committee that's working on, actually, you mentioned the sanctuary schools campaign, or the sanctuary schools that DPSCD passed a couple of years ago. Our youth right now are working on trying to get charter schools to adopt similar policies.
oh, okay.
As far as sanctuary policies.
Mhm.
And then we also have a committee who's working on access to higher education for undocumented students.
Okay,
But yeah, so we have meetings on the 3rd Monday of every month. If you follow us on social media, it's pretty easy to see how to get involved. But our youth will get out a survey to all of the school board candidates here soon too.
okay. So there are students outside of DPSCD on that committee, because you mentioned charter schools.
Yep, there's some from
Okay.
DPSCD and some from charter schools.
Okay.
Yep. We're
Okay.
an intergenerational organization, so it's sorry, my phone's going off. So it's students, community members, educators, parents. Yeah,
Okay.
awesome. Thanks. We'll be in touch.
Yeah. Yeah, thank
I'm
you.
like, I'll jump in.
Lindsay wears many hats. Okay, like so many of us.
So before we hop into our next question, Angela, do you want to introduce yourself for our interviewee?
Hi, I'm sorry I'm late. I just got back from school. But my name is Angela, and I'm also part of My Students Dream and also COC. So it's nice meeting you.
What school are you at, Angela?
I go to Cass Tech.
Okay, and what year are you in?
It's my last year. I'm a senior.
Oh, you're a senior.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, we're wishing all of you, well, Imani, you graduated already, so, but wishing you a great, safe, and fun school year.
Thank you.
Yeah. My daughter graduated in 2020, so very familiar with the green and white.
Sorry, I was unmuting myself, but yes, thank you so
That's
much
okay.
for introducing yourself, Angela, and thank you so much for your time today and letting us interview you and making time for us. We really appreciate answering all these questions. But one last thing that I want to ask is, if elected, would you commit to meeting with our youth within 6 months of your election?
Absolutely. I did it
Perfect.
before, I'll do it again, absolutely.
Awesome.
Reverend Larry Simmons, he won't let me not do that anyway. That's my buddy. And Molly. So yeah, absolutely. I look
yeah.
forward to that too, though, because I think you know, the last time I met with a couple of young people, they were just unaware of some of the youth initiatives that were happening in the district, and some of those in the district were unaware of the youth initiatives that are happening in the community. So I think there's this bridge that we've got to create, and I know Periel will be a great liaison to help with that work because she's such a rock star. And so if she's on the board, then she'll make sure that we stay connected in that way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Imperial is such an amazing person. She's also a part of our youth collective. So
Oh yeah.
we see her all the time, everywhere. She does
She
so
is
much.
everywhere.
Every day, every second, every minute. It's like, nah.
She's amazing though. But you know, like so many of you, that's why finding your voice early in life matters, because when you find it early in life, then you are in these spaces where you're able to use it. And so people won't minimize it just because you're a young person. They understand that you kind of done your homework, and that's the space that we want to make sure as young people go out that they're prepared. They've done that, which like you guys always do. Let me just say that, right? So, but you've done your homework, you knew policies. You're like, hey, one policy says, like, people, adults, they respect that, because oftentimes, because I mentor young people ages 10 to 13, young girls. And so I'm around young people all the time. And so sometimes it's like, well, they said, and it's like, well, who's they? Well, I think, we're like, no, you're not going out there like that. Like, we're going to make sure that you know what you're talking about when you go out there, that is factual, and people are going to respect you because they know that you are coming and you've done your homework. Nobody's going to throw you something that you're not prepared for. And so as adults, the ground that you all are fertilized from, that's our job to make it more fertile. And I say that all the time in the words of Tupac Shakur. He has this book about roses growing from concrete, and the ground that we grow from, sometimes there are roses who still grow from it. But as adults, our job is to make that ground more fertile so that you can continue to grow and grow without some of the distractions and obstacles that sometimes adults put in place.
For sure. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you letting us interview you, and we will be in touch, and I'll let our youth collective know that you'd be very, very interested in meeting with them.
Absolutely. And I know you'll let me know, Juanita, because you email me and I respond, right? Even if
Yes.
it's like midnight, because I'm still up doing work, right? But I appreciate that. Don't think that I'm like, oh, Juanita again. No, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. We need that.
Awesome.
And so I
Thank
appreciate,
you.
you being on top of it with it. So thank you so much.
Of course. My pleasure. My pleasure to connect you and the youth at all times.
Yes. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day and enjoy your holiday weekend. Be safe. Make good decisions out there.
You too, Angela.
Thank you.
You
Thank
too.
Bye-bye.